Assalamu alaikum. It is 11:32 Central African Time, coming to you live from Salam Media Studios in Johannesburg. I'm Aaliyah, your host. This is the Mid-Morning Talk sponsored by SANZAF, the South African National Zakah Fund, uplifting young women today to become the leaders of tomorrow. Your zakah does more than meet immediate needs. It builds a lasting legacy. Through SANZAF's partnership with Fundani, young women across Johannesburg are given the tools to build confidence, strengthen character, and lead with purpose, because real change takes education, mentorship, and opportunity. Follow the SANZAF Green Bus Tour online or donate toward their empowerment programs today at sanzaf.org.za. Welcome back. Our second guest for our show today is Shaazia Ebrahim. Welcome, Shaazia. Assalamu alaikum. Shaazia, are you there? Okay, we can see Shaazia, but we're just trying to get some audio. Please stay with us. In the meantime, I will tell you what we'll be speaking about today. We're going to be speaking about climate, gender, and social responsibility. A little bit about Shaazia Ebrahim. Shaazia Ebrahim is a feminist media and communications practitioner with an interest in gender and climate justice, mental health, and movement building. As the digital and communications specialist at the Climate Justice Coalition and co-facilitator of the Communications Working Group, she is dedicated to amplifying deliberately silenced voices through media, advocacy, and storytelling. Thank you for staying with us. Let's try this again. Shaazia, are you there? Okay.
Okay, can you hear me now, Aaliyah?
That's amazing. Welcome. Thank you for
Sorry for technical difficulties.
No worries. Okay. It happens. So, Shaazia, we're going to dive right into it. Something that I've been enjoying asking my guests is, what are you reading at the moment? And is there any writing or writer that currently intrigues you?
Wow, good question. I'm trying to read this, which is called The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran. But I haven't gotten that far into it. So I'm still, I can speak about a book that I've just finished, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
So I read this book called Pixel Flesh by Ellen Atlanta. It was nonfiction, which I don't usually love. I prefer fiction. But it explored the relationship between technology and social media and the pressures that women face to perform beauty work, and how social media and like digital culture have sort of intensified that pressure on women to constantly curate and perform like versions of themselves that fit into these extremely narrow beauty standards. Like, we're constantly being fed information that we need to be thinner and younger and more beautiful and more productive. And yeah, it was a challenging but definitely rewarding read, I would say.
I've just made a note of it because it's something I think I would like to read myself. And now I understand where the title comes from. It's a very powerful title as well. Thank you for sharing. So as I understand, you currently work for the Climate Justice Coalition. So can you give us some insight into the main objectives of the coalition? Because as you know, we have a global climate emergency.
So I guess the CJC, or the Climate Justice Coalition, is a coalition, surprise, surprise, of almost 90 member organizations. And these include trade unions, community-based organizations, faith-based group, NGOs, international NGOs, and youth groups. So just it's quite a broad-based movement. And I guess the main purpose of the coalition is to build a transformative and intersectional climate justice movement that addresses the myriad problems that we face, including like inequality and poverty, unemployment, environmental harm. She's like a monumental task, but we are trying. So yeah, we focus a lot on the just transition, which is the move away from fossil fuels like oil and gas towards more renewable solutions, but in a way that kind of centers workers and
Mhm.
communities and their livelihoods instead of just profit.
Absolutely. I mean, this is really crucial work that's taking place, and I would encourage everyone to take a look at the work of the Climate Justice Coalition online if you would like to learn more. And you mentioned, intersectionality, because obviously, the climate emergency is not just about the climate; it's about how it impacts literally everyone. And since it is Women's Month, I think it would probably be a good moment here to dive into what are some of the gendered implications of climate change.
Definitely. And you know what, Alia, actually, what I would love to do is to first kind of distinguish for people who are listening between weather and climate. I find it
Mhm,
quite useful because I think people think that climate change is just like, oh, it's just the weather. But weather is like what happens in the short term. So whether it's raining today or last week we had a cold front, but climate change is like the longer term patterns. So I
mhm,
always like using the analogy of like weather is your mood, but climate change is your personality. So it makes it so difficult for us to be in a relationship with the earth, thinking that these are just mood swings. And actually, what we're getting is like a whole new personality, like creating a whole new monster
oh,
almost.
that's a really beautiful way of explaining it, thank you.
Right? That we actually have no idea how to deal with. So we see like really hot days, heat waves, rain, intense rainfall. Um, and I think what the way that really connects to the gender dimension of it all is the hidden impact of care. So
Mm,
when people are getting sick because of pollution or because of a lack of water or because of heat waves, when food becomes more expensive, when a flood destroys your home, there's always someone that has to pick up the pieces. And of course, care work is disproportionately carried by women in our society. So, what happens is that climate change sort of just increases women's unpaid labor
mhm,
without necessarily looking at how that's actually a climate impact. And, in our country, women are often poor and working class, and they are the ones who are bearing like the greatest burden of the climate crisis. So, in my work, I've spoken a lot to women who, for example, have been impacted by the 2022 floods. And these are women who have a few children who are like pillars of their community who just lost everything, their whole lives washed away in a flood, and now have to take care of children with very limited resources, no work, no can't grow food anymore, which maybe
mm,
was a way for them to feed their families. Um, and also now have the burden of almost taking care of other community members who are sick, who now can't take care of their communities. And it's just like that knock-on effect. Like we sometimes forget how women are such pillars of society, of community building, and the amount of work they do to allow us to function every day the way that we function, whether it's like going to
absolutely.
work or going to school. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the way.
I think these are very important reminders, especially because today is International Humanitarian Day, which, yeah, so this coincided really well. Which is what about shedding light on aid workers, on victims of various crises, and in this case, obviously, the climate crisis. And obviously, like the intersections, just generally, the more oppressed people in society are going to suffer more, whether they are women, whether they are poor. It's sort of like double oppression, double suffering. So thank you for shedding light on those issues. Do you think that there are other sort of like hidden implications of climate change that perhaps are not as apparent to to the average individual like me that you could perhaps maybe speak about?
Sure. I think actually the average individual grapples with a lot of the impacts of climate change while maybe like calling it something different.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, even when we're thinking about food and we're thinking about, how much we pay for our groceries every month, and that fluctuates a lot. It fluctuates, especially when farmers are, for example, dealing with unpredictable rainfall and drought. We've seen that, for example, the Western Cape has received much less rainfall this season, and that's going to have an impact on our pockets, on our grocery bills, because it just
100%.
means, yeah, it just means it affects what they produce. So definitely with when it comes to food, I think also with health, we live in Johannesburg, Aaliyah, but people are living in Mpumalanga in the northwest.
Mm.
And sometimes you kind of normalize the way you struggle to breathe or the respiratory issues that you have. But the amount of stress that climate change puts on the atmosphere and the air that we're breathing as well, then changes in rainfall and temperature sometimes affect mosquitoes in the air. A disease is carried by mosquitoes. So there's so many ways in which we're like absorbing or like going on with life and thinking that this gradual worsening is just normal, but it's all kind of the effects of climate change, I would say.
Wow, I mean, that really gives us all a very, very deep perspective as to how serious the problem actually is. Because I think, as you said, like we think it's just these are all isolated problems, but they're all connected to each other. We will continue to chat more after the break. Please stay with us. And yeah, very excited to dive more into speaking about climate with Shaazia Ebrahim.
The following is a paid political advertisement by the Al Jama'ah political party.
Regularization and the alternative political party for South Africa is the Al Jama'ah effect. Roads will be fixed, refuse will be removed, and personal safety in your homes, streets, parks, and pathways to the local shops and shopping malls will be our top priority. Al Jama'ah aim to regularize shack dwellers by giving them land tenure, regularize water and electricity supply by making it a reliable source. Vote for good governance, accelerated service delivery, excellence, and the best of breed of councillors, mayors, and mayoral committee members. That is the Al Jama'ah effect, South Africa's alternative political party, the Al Jama'ah effect.
That was a paid political advertisement by the Al Jama'ah political party.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
There are over 200 million orphans globally. We can't help all of them, but what if we each helped just one? The Al Imdad Foundation now gives you an opportunity to help just one orphan from Syria or Palestine. For just 500 Rand per month, you can help safeguard the dignity of an orphan by assisting them with basic needs such as food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and attention. Our orphan sponsorship program allows you to track the progress of your orphan through regular feedback. Make a difference in the life of an orphan today. Visit alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. a full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Tonight, a child in a shack will try to sleep through the cold. No heating, no insulation, just thin walls and a biting cold. African Muslims Agency is on the ground, reaching families in informal settlements across South Africa with blankets and winter essentials. Help us spread warmth this winter. For 180 Rand, give a blanket. For 360 Rand, a full winter pack. One gift, one less night in the cold. African Muslims Agency. Empowering, educating, inspiring.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. This is your host Aaliyah. It is the mid-morning talk, proudly sponsored by Sanzaf. We have Shaazia Ebrahim with us, a digital and communication specialist at the Climate Justice Coalition. So we had a really interesting discussion before the break about the intersectional impacts of the climate emergency and how all these things are connected. But obviously, the people working behind the scenes, like in the Climate Justice Coalition, part of all these organizations, definitely, must experience some kind of emotional burnout, I would think. So just in the activist space, I think generally something that is sidelined is mental health and wellness. And how does this affect movements? And have there been any efforts to perhaps remedy this?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question, Aaliyah. Actually, I think this is such an important question in activism broadly, because we know that activists, whether you're a housing activist or a climate activist or a Palestine, activists work in conditions of crisis, of urgency, and increasingly limited resources, and up against giants, systems with unlimited resources, it would seem, So I think so many movement leaders and activists are dealing with, in the climate movement, climate disasters, absolutely dire inequality, violence, and community struggles while still trying to organize solutions. And this can lead to a significant amount of burnout, of exhaustion, and of something also called compassion fatigue, almost, where you kind of normalize all of these things happening. You almost don't realize how unsympathetic you're being to very extreme conditions, and just feelings of hopelessness. And I think we've all seen, especially if you've been part of different movements, that social movements have often prioritized action over well-being. Like the cause is bigger than the individual, which works in many different ways, of course. But then we realize that movements can only be sustainable if our activists are prioritizing their care and their well-being. And I think there's a much larger recognition happening that care is political, and that movement sustainability does depend on people being able to take time off, being able to rest and to heal and to recover. And I think if I'm the one that has to say this, because I know that a lot of activists are just carrying on and normalizing their struggles, like, you do deserve to take care of yourself and to rest and to heal, and that will make you a bigger asset to the movement. And I think that's what we're trying to do in the Climate Justice Coalition and the climate justice space. It's difficult because of everything. And also that people are experiencing increasing climate grief and eco-anxiety at the state of things, like, this large monster that you almost feel like you can't control. But we're trying, you know.
Yeah, but no, absolutely. It's a good reminder that, we have to fill our own cups first before we fill anyone else's cup. I think in general, that's something that's really important. So yeah, we've obviously spoken about these sort of like monsters or these big things that we're up against. So, who are the main players responsible for this, and who can we hold accountable for what the world is currently going through?
Sure. Big questions, Aaliyah.
Yes. I love the big questions.
The climate crisis is primarily driven by the burning of fossil fuels. So that's your coal and your oil and your gas. And it's actually a relatively small number of corporations who seemingly are like holding all these puppet strings and have contributed disproportionately to global greenhouse gas emissions. And it's actually so interesting how intersectional these movements are, because if you look at a corporation like Glencore, for example, mining coal and creating havoc amongst coal mining communities in South Africa, whether it's like pollution and or like unfair labor practices, etc. And then as well contributing that same coal to the genocide in Palestine. So it's like kind of these same players, these same few players that seem to be just everywhere. And we also need to, I guess, hold our governments accountable, because governments do have a huge responsibility to regulate these corporations and definitely implement climate policies, and to hold them accountable for the things that they're doing to our people. But I think it's so important as well, just for us to realize that, especially people who are suffering from climate anxiety, it's the accountability is not on ordinary people alone. We can make small differences, and that doesn't mean that what you do isn't appreciated in the great scheme of things. But these corporations, these governments, and as well wealthier countries who, of course, bear historical responsibility because their own industrialization used fossil fuels for centuries. And now it's at a point where they're telling us that, our fossil fuel emissions are destroying the planet when they've been doing it for centuries. So it's like complicated, but we need corporate accountability, we need stronger regulation, and we need commitment to an actual just transition.
Absolutely. And I think we need to remember that as ordinary citizens, we have power, and we have the power to make a change. So yeah, I think with local government elections coming up, where obviously, being an ordinary citizen is a very powerful thing to be, because our vote counts. Do you have any sort of advice for us in upcoming local elections? So you don't have to tell us what parties to vote for, but just in terms of remedying the climate emergency, what sort of things should we be looking for? And then, of course, once you vote someone in, you've got to keep holding them accountable, So yes, I'm going to take the opportunity to say this to the current government, that they do need to stop selling coal to Israel. Enough is enough. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a huge question, Aaliyah. But I think, as you said, we do have power as individuals, and I know that our especially younger generations, but people in general, have become so disillusioned with voting, and it's hard to argue with that. I can understand why people don't necessarily want to go to the polls and vote, but I think it's so important, especially given the history of this country and the people that died to give us the vote, to exercise your right and to be an informed voter, to take the time to look through these different manifestos that
100%.
Just take the time, because it actually impacts your life. We see, because of the ginormous service delivery crisis that we're all facing in various extremes across the country, we know how important these things are. So I think look through the manifestos, make an informed vote, know who the local ward councillors are that are running in your area, and you'll see they'll be doing a lot of campaigning in the next few months, and they'll be kind of at your local mall or at the traffic light or wherever they're standing to try and get attention. Speak to them, have a personal relationship with them, because that also allows you to have some kind of say into what's going on, and to have sort of that in, and to hold that person accountable.
Absolutely, 100%. I think I'm really happy that you emphasize reading party manifestos, because you will find everything that you're looking for in those, and you might even be surprised, with some party policies. It's really important because, as you mentioned, it does impact our everyday life, and we're voting for change in our everyday lives. So absolutely, I think this discussion, if anyone was listening, would be very valuable, for people to make these informed decisions. So thank you so much for sharing all of these insights and for sharing your knowledge. And I would like to just share this Native American proverb that I came across that says, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children," which I think is just so apt, because this is what we're talking about. You spoke about the long-term impacts. It's not something that is just going to impact us in the next year or in the next 2 years. It's sort of, you're thinking about what sort of legacy are we building for the next generation, and it's quite haunting and scary to think about that. But we do have the power to change things. We do have the power to demand accountability for present and historic injustices, because I think there's a lot that hasn't been dealt with currently and in the past that's impacting us now. So yeah, towards a just world. Thank you so much, Shaazia, for joining us. Thank you for sharing your insights, and take care of yourself in the movement as well.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much for hosting me and allowing me to speak on this platform.
Enjoy the rest of your day. And that brings us to the end of our interview with Shaazia Ebrahim. We will go for an ad break. Please stay with us. We have got 2 more speakers lined up for the show. Don't miss out.